This conference will now be recorded.
Come to order. Josh, would you do roll call, please?
Sure. Mike Berganini.
Good evening.
Lloyd Colston.
Here.
Brandon Jellings.
Here.
Chris Johnson.
Here.
Dwayne Eastman.
Here.
Cody Richardson.
Here.
And Dottie Smith.
Here. Everybody's here. All right.
Good.
And I assume you've read the minutes from the last meeting. Any questions or comments? Could I have a motion, please?
Move approve. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as they're printed, written. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We're good to go.
I don't think that was an opposed.
I think that was an aye. Yeah. We're going to hold a public hearing. Consider the advisability of granting a conditional use permit to allow a short-term rental in an R2 medium-density residential district located at 311 Highland Drive. Back a motion to open a public hearing.
I'll move that way. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is open. Josh?
All right, so we're going to do a quick presentation on what the request is about. So this is the house in question. So the proposal is again to put in a short-term rental in an R2 district at 311 Highland Drive, and that does require a conditional use permit according to our regulations. So this is the property, Highland Drive, Hillside neighborhood. Right here's 311. It's a residential neighborhood. This property is about a little over a quarter acre. And again, you have to have a conditional use permit to do this sort of thing in the neighborhood. We do, and I'll just let you know, there are other short-term rentals in the city. They all were generally established before we had this regulation. So we added this particular regulation when we did our comprehensive plan and all those updates. So this is still a relatively new regulation. So this house was built in 1959. There's been some minor modifications to it since then, but there wasn't any other cases on it, any other land use cases. Never had to come forward this board before. So the comprehensive plan calls for this to be a residential area. This is still considered a residential use by our regulations, so it still fits there. There isn't really any goals in our plan about short-term rentals. The main reason we do conditional use permits for this is so that they don't negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood or further reduce the amount of available housing. So we don't want a whole neighborhood of these, for instance, because that's using valuable housing now. But once in a while, it's not going to be a huge issue. We also, and yeah, that's the other thing I put there, is we can control, the planning commission can control how many are in a certain neighborhood by this process. So zoning, of course, again, it's residential. And the use proposed is usually consistent with the intent of the regulations. So here is a few pictures of the neighborhoods. This is looking southwest along Highland Drive. Surely most of you are familiar with the kind of meandering route that Highland Drive takes. So that's looking to the southwest. This is looking the other direction towards the northeast. So residential, single-family residential neighborhood. Across the street is kind of a vacant lot there. I think it's just connected to the house that's next door, but they have a nice open yard there. So like I usually say with the conditional use permit, of course, I have some concerns about any use that's a conditional use permit, but that's why we we have this process. That's why we put conditions on this type of use. So, but I would recommend approval anyways, even with those minor concerns, because it is still residential in character. There is a driveway, so they can park off street, and assuming everything is managed well, there won't be any negative impacts to this neighborhood. The proposed conditions, and actually a couple of these were on the application. So this is something that the applicant is pretty much okay with anyways. Maximum 5 guests per night, no pets allowed. And I put this, we did several years ago, a craft house. I don't remember who all was on the commission at that time, but up on Valley View Drive, somebody was requesting one of these for what she called a craft house, where people would spend the night and they would do crafts. So very similar to a short-term rental, but in that one, we asked that they keep the parking off the street unless, of course, it's just unreasonable. So with 5 guests, if they all came in their own separate car, there's not going to be enough space probably in that driveway. But the idea is that we try to get them to encourage their guests to park off the street. That way we're not taking up any more space than our typical residential use. Now, obviously, everybody has times when they have more people than usual parked in front of their house, Christmas, whatever, you have extra guests. But we're trying to make sure that we don't make this any worse for this neighborhood. There's not a huge parking problem up here either, but I guess that's really all I have to say. Our applicant is on GoToMeeting if you have any questions for her.
Is this a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom house?
It was a 3-bedroom. I can tell you that. It was. I live around the corner. It was a 3-bedroom.
Excuse me.
Jean, are you able to hear us? Maybe she is.
Are you neighbors?
We're neighbors.
And your names are?
Huh?
Your name?
Nistern.
I'm sorry.
Pam Nistern.
Nistern?
Nistern.
I'm Bob Hicks. I live right next door, 301 Highland.
Okay. Do you have any objections at all?
Well, I just have some questions.
We just asked some questions.
As far as, like, what was it, five guests per night? So it's like, now what is that? When it gets dark, so like during the day, can 20 people be there? But they just can't stay overnight? Any clarification on that?
You could probably put something else in there. But yeah, the intention was for night, like who's actually staying there overnight.
Yeah, stay overnight. I understand that, but now as far as who owns the house? Does the owner live in town here or from Wichita? I'm just thinking, say I have a complaint, noise or something like that. Who do we contact? Is there somebody in town, or is it outside of the owner live outside of our city?
They do live outside the city.
Where at,
Yeah, out of state. They live out of state.
And so will there be a management company involved?
My guess is probably not.
Online?
They're probably looking at one of those platforms like your Airbnb or something like that.
So if one has a problem, then will we know who to be able to contact? How would we?
Not directly, there is
Not directly. Okay. Well, that's a concern for me. I mean,
And how long is the limit? I mean, you said it's limited. How long is it going to be? Just a short term thing? thing on this.
Is it weekly, monthly?
And is the owner gonna be living?
So basically, the terminology short-term, basically the difference between a short-term and a long-term rental, like you have a landlord where you just rent out a house, anything less than a month is considered short-term. That's this kind of the state statute definition of it. I would not anticipate somebody being there for even a month, but that's the definition we would use. So it has to be less than a month.
But there is no controls on how many can be there during the day, nor is there anyone to contact if there's a problem.
I could be contacted. I live here in town, and it's my sister's property.
Okay.
And your name, sir?
It's Ron Steiner.
Okay.
So I stand corrected.
Okay.
Do you know, will they put it on like VRBO or Airbnb website? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I
Airbnb.
think so. Yeah. Really don't
Okay.
know correct about that, but I think that's what.
And it's one of your sisters, two sisters?
Yeah.
Josh, are we making them make sure smokes are hardwired or egress is fine? Are we doing any of that?
We don't necessarily have a strong requirement, but we could add that as a condition. That they
I'm
do
just,
that.
you know, a lot of the other ones were already completely updated past inspections in town, so.
We could do that. That actually, I believe, was something that was on that other craft house thing.
Okay.
So we could add that as a condition that they have that checked out.
Can I say something too? Like they had said something, if visitors came during the day or whatever. But I know I've stayed in Airbnbs out of state before too. And most of the time when you do that, you're staying there so you can visit family or, or whatever. And if there is a limit of people, you have to list out who is gonna stay there and how many people you're gonna have there, because they have a limit of how many people can stay there. But most of them, if you're gonna have people coming to visit, like have extra, like I had my kids come over and visit, I made sure that was approved through the owner, through the Airbnb. You can message them and make sure you have prior approval for that during the day. Not that they're gonna stay the night, but if you're gonna have like a dinner, or something over to have extra people, they can have prior approval for that. If that needs to be on there too.
Is there a reason why she isn't moving into the house?
Because they live in Reno, Nevada.
And so they never did intend on
No.
moving in her? Okay.
Now, at one point, they were gonna have it as a rental, but then they decided not to have it as a rental.
So there's nobody, is there somebody in town that would monitor what goes on there at all? Or
Like
Yeah,
this only thing
there's-
we-
periodically or something,
Yeah, I usually check it pretty often.
Have you guys done a VRBO or Airbnb house? I know, there is kind of a system to it where you've got to lease the place and there's a cleaning fee, someone's got to come in and make the beds, wash out everything, or the next guest comes in and it's like a hotel, it's all cleaned up. So someone's got to come in there between every guest and make this place ready for the next guest. So they're going to have someone doing that.
someone in town that do that.
Yeah, maybe there's a cleaning service. I'm not sure who they would have do that, but.
See, with the capacity, I'm just thinking during the day, theoretically, you could have problems during the day. You could have a meth lab, just during the day, and 20 people in there. But they just leave it dark. They just leave at night if you keep the capacity, 5 guests. And like I said, they've had problems elsewhere with rentals like this. We just don't know, because the owner, like I said, lives out of town. And so the neighbors So what do we do? You know, who do we contact? Of course,
Yes, we just have to get hold of you.
I understand we can call the police or call the city or something
We
like
call
that.
Ron. Ron has said that he would be.
Yeah.
I guess you could choose, you could pick your battles. It's either probably a short-term rental or they'll turn around as a full-time rental.
Right.
And then you have the same issue.
Yeah.
Either way, there's somebody gonna be in that house. At least with short-term, you know it's going to be little, so at least you'll have turnover. If you don't like these tenants for 3 days, you have somebody else. You know, you normally they're 12-month leases.
Well, now with the short term, so how long, what's the maximum length that they could stay? Could they?
Less than a month.
Is it a month? Okay,
Less-
30 days.
Less than a month.
30 days.
Yeah, but generally, when you have a short-term rental, your price to stay in that short-term rental is a lot more than you're gonna pay
Oh, yeah.
for a long-term rental. So no one's gonna wanna stay in that booger very long.
No.
Because it's gonna cost a small fortune.
They're here because somebody's graduating, somebody's
Yeah.
getting married, a family reunion,
I
somebody's in the
Yeah.
hospital. That particularly our small
work.
town.
A lot of works, they will come to town because they work. They don't wanna stay in a hotel, they wanna have a kitchen,
Yeah.
or whatever.
So, yeah. GE used to rent some
They
of
rent from
these.
us still, up in Winfield.
They rent,
They have
they used to,
interns come.
yeah, they used to rent from us.
They
for
just do a
summer
roll every 6
interns.
months, they roll over.
Yeah,
Somebody else.
that's, and they were very, very good.
Very good.
Yeah, no problems at all. I don't anticipate problems there. These B&Bs are all over the place. And they're very convenient for those that need a short-term rental, and they're very good for the people that are
Well, the
renting
people
out.
who rent them get rated. So if
Yes.
somebody comes in there and does something they're not supposed to, then they get a rating and then they can't rent another Airbnb. And the landlords are rated as well. So it's all, everybody's rated, and it's kind of a self-monitoring system, really.
And unusual for this type of thing is there is a local contact through Ron, brother of the owner. And we all know Ron, so. Yes, Lloyd, did you want to speak?
For Josh, do we have other Airbnb operations in our city?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, there are others.
And I've been on this panel for a number of months. I've never had anyone else petition for a conditional use. Why all of a sudden are we getting it?
So I said that earlier. So we didn't have this regulation until 23.
Okay.
So any of them that were established before that point, either they slipped under the rug, I don't think so, or they were just before 2023. So they weren't required to have this
Does
process.
a conditional use, should we approve this, is it indefinite for this property or does it have a term limit?
So you can actually define that. Generally, a conditional use permit runs with the land. And so it just continues on. But if you wanted to have something like if they sold it, it was revoked, you could put something like that in there. But usually we don't have a time frame per se.
And for the city's liability, for the city's standing, should a tenant at this conditional use property violate the conditions of use, what does that expose the city to?
At that point, it's a zoning violation, so we would just treat it like any other zoning violation, investigate it, and if they're truly in violation of whatever this was, then we would revoke it. And then at that point, if they continue to do it, continue to do the conditional use, then they would be in violation and they would be subject to penalties like any other thing. So,
Thank you.
fines and stuff.
So just remind us what is it? Our one district, there is no permit required. You can just do it, right?
You know what? I can't remember how we decided
Is
that.
that?
I think it was the other way around.
Free,
So it was R3 that we didn't require them.
because that's high density.
Yeah, R2 we did, and R1, I think we either required the conditional use permit or it wasn't allowed at all.
So if you're in R3, you can just go to Airbnb, list your property, go.
we want to encourage, basically what we're trying to do is encourage these to be located in those higher density districts.
The one on Chestnut. Does that have a conditional use?
No, that one doesn't.
Was that before or?
That one's been there quite a while. I don't know exactly when that was established, but
Is that the one that just sold?
I don't, for sure. So,
I didn't know it was.
Just for sale. So,
I think that would be next door.
is that the next door?
And he would be responsible for the maintenance, like mowing, grass and.
yeah, everything would still, they would have to follow all those same regulations. They would still have to keep it mowed and everything.
Yeah, and because it's a short-term rental, they're gonna have to keep the place pretty nice, because when you're coming from out of town to stay in a place,
No broken windows or.
yeah, it's gonna need to stay, it's gonna stay a lot nicer than a long-term rental, you know?
I've had a friend,
Don't those reviews
that had
come
her
from
house in that same way, she made an Airbnb out of it. She moved into a different place, and so anyway, and she was glad she did, but it wasn't very long, and they sold that house, the Airbnb. And so anyway, and sold it to one of the family members. So anyway, it didn't take very long until they were out of their Airbnb for them, so. Anyway, but she was so glad that some of her family's got it, so that was happy.
So at this point, there isn't anything that would stop it from being sold and continuing as Airbnb to it.
I would say if you want to do that, we can put that as part of your motion. Or I can just, yes, put it as part of the motion. That you want to have it limited by that scope.
To that.
Because if that's not unheard of, we've done that before.
Yeah.
That is probably not a bad idea with this kind of use. And it's not like it's the end of the world because that new owner they would just have to come back and request it again.
But they would have to request it, so.
Right, they would have to
So
request
it would give the city some control.
Mhm.
And the neighbors a voice, so. Anything else you'd like to say?
Not that I can think of anything. Don't have anything.
Ron, do you have anything? Gentlemen? Anything else for session?
What's your last name?
So where do we land on as far as making sure they're up to code on any property moving forward?
Yeah.
We could add that. We could add that because, like I said, with that other one, we did have that as a condition that they had to make sure that it was up to code.
I mean,
So fire.
yeah, egress and smoke. Yeah. So,
I think that's a very reasonable.
Do you know if the heat source is gas or?
I don't.
They're gonna need carbon monoxide detectors. And I like the hard wiring. I know tenants take the batteries out.
but they still be.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I can add that as a condition.
Okay, so what have you got as conditions so far?
So that means maximum 5 guests, no pets. They should strive at least to have the parking off the street. And then they have to meet the appropriate building and fire.
Yeah, are we talking hard wiring with you guys?
That would be current code to do that. That might be asking a bit much though, because that's unusual to require that. But yes, definitely the smoke detectors. I think that's it.
And the other condition was in effect this all.
And then, yeah, we can add that as, that's not technically a condition, but at the bottom is in the ordinance that the city commission would pass. There is a section that describes how this works. Usually if it doesn't change upon ownership, it would require the owner to notify when they change hands. So we just changed the language to where it says upon a transfer that this would be revoked. I think that's reasonable for this kind of use.
Would you be looking for anything more than what we've discussed?
I can't think of anything else that would come up.
Yeah, we try to cover it as much as
Yeah.
possible.
Doing a good job.
Okay, gentlemen. We've talked it to death. We've listened.
Ma'am? I have a
Yeah.
question for our guest. This is a conditional use permit, and you're saying a growing list of conditions. Will your sister be okay with those conditions being met?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, those first two were on the application. So I just folded it into this part of it.
Don't like doing stuff to people if they're unwilling and haven't even done to them.
Well, but we still have to have a standard, so it doesn't matter if they like it or not. You know, if we're gonna move this forward as far as multiples across the city, we have to have a bare minimum set of standards, so.
Yeah.
And we do not have specific regulations. So we're kind of making regulations for that.
So we need to be careful and cover all the
Yes.
bases. Okay, I need a motion. If we're finished discussing, I need a motion to come out of the public hearing.
Move that we cancel, please,
Close the public hearing.
and come back into regular session.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify with aye. Opposed? Okay, we're in open meeting. And what's left for us to do is, we need a motion. This is a roll call or not?
This will be a roll call vote.
Okay. This will be a roll call vote, and this is a motion to approve or disapprove. Gentlemen, can I have a motion either way?
I make a motion to approve this location as a short-term rental with proposed conditions being met.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify with aye. Oh, never mind.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Mike Berganini,
Aye.
Lloyd Colston,
Yes.
Brandon Jellings.
Yes.
Chris Johnson,
Yes.
Dwayne Eastman,
Yes.
Cody Richardson,
Yes.
Dottie Smith.
Yes. Okay, motion
carries.
passes. Thank you for coming.
So Josh,
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Mike will go inspect it for conditions.
Yep, that would require.
You can, you know where Ron is. You know how to get hold of him. You know where he is.
You made the information.
I was hoping they would. Why didn't I lie in Hawaii? Why to good heavens, no, Hawaii. Okay, do you have anything else?
Just so no comments from them.
So the only other thing I would say is there's not going to be a meeting in February. I will be out of town anyways, and we don't have anything, so we won't have one in February. And just to let you know, the regulations for the billboard signs, I'm going to be taking that to the city commission next week. So when we have them this time of year, I like to avoid that first meeting in January because they do their reorganization, switch mayor and all that stuff. So we push it back. It's been a long time, but it will be.
Is there a historical meeting this month?
And there you go.
When is that?
That'll be on the 27th. Monday.
So it's definitely built February meeting.
Yes. And that, yeah, because I'll be out of town. I'll be in Kansas City, so that's not going to be. Unless Therese wants to run that meeting.
No.
27th at 5:30?
Yes, that's it. And I'll be set.
Yes, it's on, so I can look it over. All right, gentlemen, do I have a motion for adjournment? Second,
Second.
all in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Josh, don't forget to turn off the light.